Welcome to the 21 levels of fatherhood engagement training workshop. Uh, Today I'll be talking about the 21 levels of fatherhood engagement. My name is Abdul-Rahmaan I, and I'm the executive director of My People Clinical Services. And we do a lot of work with fathers and fatherhood engagement. And one of the things that I felt is very important is that people understand that there's levels to engagement, right? You can start off at level one, and really what we want to do is deepen our relationship with fathers to the point that we are seeing them be successful. We are seeing them succeed in what they're being fathers to their children, and they're working their way through the system. And so this training is primarily for social workers, people that are working for state agencies, social workers that are working in fatherhood programs, where you're trying to work with men and fathers. I think that even teachers could benefit from this training. So let's look at the 21 levels of fatherhood engagement. Level one, encourage father's presence. So we want to encourage fathers to be at the table. We want them, if we're having a meeting about their children, we want to encourage fathers. We want to invite moms. We want to invite non-custodial dads. We want to invite paternal family members. We want to encourage fathers that this is something that is important, that you come, that you be a part of, that you join us. And so when we have situations where letters go home, I know we typically go through mom, but what we want to do is make sure that we do a little bit more effort and invite fathers, especially when you have a non-custodial father. I think it's of the utmost importance to include them in the mix because they too want to know about what's going on with their children. And so I just want to make sure that we are encouraging fathers' presence. We are giving them a seat at the table, and we're making sure that fathers are aware of everything that's going on with their children. All right. Level two is greet fathers and invite them to join the home visit. So when you go to a home visit, when you visit the home, you want to be able to walk in the door and you want to greet fathers. You want to say to fathers, "Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson. How are you doing today, Mr. Johnson?" You don't want to walk in there and start and get straight to the business at hand where you start dealing with mom, where you start going through the paperwork with mom. You want to deal with dad. You want to say hello, and you want to say to him, "Mr. Johnson, we would really appreciate if you were a part of this conversation that we're about to have about your children." You know, when you go into a man's home and you do not greet him, when you go into a man's home and you do not say hello, good afternoon, good evening, you're being disrespectful. And so, when we're talking about men and fathers, we have to think about how men and fathers operate in the world. A lot of times when we go from a social service perspective, with social services, education is heavily dominated by white women. We try to go past the men and we try to act as though the men. We try to use this old trope that men are only providers, that men don't care about the little things of what's going on with their kids. And I will venture to say that in 2021, going into 2022 and beyond, men are different now. Men are more involved in their children's lives than ever before. So when you go into the home, when a father is there, when a man is there, and you want to be there at a time where there is a possibility for him to be a part of the conversation. So you can't do all of your visits in the middle of the day. If you know that he's working, go in the evening so you can be able to include him in the conversation. You greet him and you invite him to join in the home visit. Level three, we want to ask fathers their thoughts, opinions, ideas, and resources. We want to ask fathers their thoughts, opinions, ideas, and resources. This is the thing. If we are involved with a father, we're trying to engage this father. We want to know from this father, how do you feel about this? What is your opinion about this? What ideas do you have that can make this situation better? What resources do you have access to that could help your children if something happens where we need to remove them, where they need support when you are at work, where they need help with something in particular? We need to know all of this, and the only way you get it is by asking the fathers. You have to be developing a relationship. We're only on level 3, and we want to know, what are your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions, your resources? What are the things that you have that you can be able to add to the benefit for your child? When we're engaging someone and we're asking them about their ideas and opinions, first of all, as soon as you ask someone about their ideas and opinion, once again, you give that person value. You add value to that person. And so it's of the utmost importance for you to understand that we want fathers, we want men to feel valued in the process so that they are able to do and be there for their children. They're being there by providing resources. They're being there by giving ideas. They're being there by giving their opinion and their thoughts. And they need to be heard. They need to be heard, whether it's coming off a little gruff or not. They need to be heard so that they are able to get to a resolution and move things forward. But the big thing I said today is value. We want to make sure that we add value to we actually show the fathers that they are valuable in the conversation. All right, level 4, review and discuss documents with fathers. So we come into this home visit. There's a bunch of documents that people we're just signing. Hey, sign this, sign that. There's one thing to have somebody sign something. There's another thing to make sure that they understand what they're signing. A lot of times in history, men have just signed away their life because they didn't take the time to read, because they didn't take the time to review and discuss, what does this say? I feel like we're not trying to do a sleight of hand with fathers. We're trying to be clear. We're trying to make sure that they understand. So when they sign something, when they read something, when they have something, we're being very transparent with them. We don't want to do any sleight of hand. This is not trickery. We're not just trying to get in and get out. Hey, we're going to have you sign this, sign it, and get out. No, we want to make sure that we review it and we talk about it, and then we are able to have the consciousness to be able to say, hey, they understand what I'm talking about. So when you have documents, you want to make sure that you review and you discuss them with fathers. Number 5, level 5, this is so important. We're going 21 levels deep. Level 5, listen to fathers. So we already talked at level 3 where we were saying we want to hear we want to ask them about their thoughts and their opinions, right? But there's going to be some times where you need to listen to fathers as they talk to you about their personal trauma, as they talk to you about some of the issues they may have with mother, as they talk to you about some of the concerns they have about their children, as they talk to you about how they want to be more involved, as they talk to you about their anger with the system. You got to listen to them. You got to be able to hear what they're saying and not just take it like, oh man, I want to get this over with. You want to listen to them so that you can be able to use that information to be able to ask appropriate questions and get appropriate information so you can move the case forward. If you're not using your listening skills with fathers, they will pick up on that. And they will feel, once again, disrespected because they're not being listened to. They're not being heard. Men Men, right? When you're not involved with the system, men are heard. Men make noise. Men make sure that their words are spoken. And so I believe that as people who are trying to engage fathers, we need to listen to them. Level 6, have real conversations with fathers. Provide fathers with the facts of what they need to do. Have real conversations. So you just listen to them. And so when you listen to somebody, sometimes fathers, men, are just talking that talk, talking to hear themselves talk, and they just babbling. This is when we come back with a real conversation. Mr. Johnson, you did all that talking just now, and I really did hear you. You said you wanted to be there for your child, but you've missed 3 out of the last 4 supervised visits. Mr. Johnson, you haven't showed up for the PPT. Mr. Johnson, you haven't been there as you said you would. Mr. Johnson, I've been waiting for this document. I've been waiting for you to come to this visit. I've been waiting for you to bring some of your family members to the table. Real conversation. Mr. Johnson, if you do not do what you're supposed to do, we are going to get to the point where we're going to close this case, where we're going to terminate this case. We're going to move forward. Don't you understand that there's a time limit on everything that we're doing? So when you're having a real conversation, you're giving them the facts. You're able to say to them like, hey, we could do all this talking. We can do all this meeting. We can do all this tomfoolery. But if you don't do the things you're supposed to do, my job is to move forward. And I'm going to move forward. That's a real conversation. And I think that fathers will appreciate that when we have real conversations with them. We want to validate fathers. Level 7, we want to validate fathers. So when fathers are doing what they're supposed to do, when fathers are showing up, we want to validate them. We want to say, hey, I see you. I respect what you're doing. We want to make sure that we're giving them validation for the things that they do right. We want to be able to make sure that we see fathers in a light where they can get recognition for what they've been doing for their children. And we want to be able to see it where they are able to operate with their children, love their children, care for their children, and we see it outside of the realm of our system, whether it's education or social services. We want to validate fathers for doing the things that they ultimately are supposed to do, and when given the opportunity, can do. This is a big one. We want to see fathers on equal footing as mothers. Level 8. So now we 8 levels in, and nobody is taking the time to say, like, sometimes we see mothers on a higher level than we do fathers. We have to level the playing field. Oftentimes when people think about children, they think about children as though they're going to be babies forever. As though, like, they're going to be toddlers forever. They're going to be changing diapers and giving them milk. And the reality is, in 3 years, they are potty trained and they're walking and they're doing things on their own. In 5 years, they're going to school. Maybe even 4 years, they're going to school. And so the job of a parent is to continue to prepare them for the rest of their life, yes. But the things that we think about that moms do, fathers after a certain point, after a certain age, can do it too. And we may not do it the way that mom does it. We may, when my kids were little and I used to cook my kids dinner, I did not cook the things that their mom cooked. I didn't cook the way that their mom cooked. But they got fed. They got fed. They didn't go hungry. And so we've got to start seeing men in their unique way that they do whatever they do as equal, on the same footing as moms, as having the capability and the ability to care for their children effectively. We got to, no longer can we be like we're just blinded by how we were raised, blinded by our mother's love. And there's nothing wrong with mother love. But the thing is that we also have to be able to see the gains that fathers have made, the gains that fathers are making, and see that the fathers are trying, they're trying to figure it out, and they're doing a good job. And we got to be able to see that they have the capability to care for their children just as good as moms do. Level 9, make sure fathers understand what's going on. So a lot of these levels come back to clarification. You know, we get in these systems, and so fathers just they're like men will just go do it. They just want to go do the task. So they feel like men are, if I showed up, that's good enough. No. You have to show up and you have to pay attention. You have to show up and you have to add something. You have to show up and be a part of the conversation, right? So we need to make sure that when the fathers who think that showing up is all they need to do, when the fathers they think that being there is their part, they contribute it. No. We have to ask them, like, are you sure you understand what we're talking about? Are you sure? So educationally, right? You need to be able to make sure that we are in agreement that your child needs more support. Social service and the social service system. We need to make sure we understand that if you don't stop using drugs, right? We are not going to place your child back with you. We're going to take your child away from you, and we're going to place your child in foster care. Fathers have to understand what's going on and how it's going to impact them, how it's going to impact their children. So we want to be clear. Once again, we want to be clear with fathers so they have no excuse that they didn't know. I showed up. I came to the meeting. I thought that was good enough. No, that's not good enough. You have to make sure that they understand what we're talking about, what the expectation is at the meeting as well. All right, number 10, level 10, make referrals to services that fathers will need to make them better. Make referrals to services that fathers will need and will make them better. So, is there a fatherhood program in your area? Is there a drug treatment program in your area? Is there a parenting program in your area? What programs? We don't want to just refer just for the sake of referring. If the father has these abilities already, we don't want to make the referral. But if the father is in need of some additional supports, some additional training, some additional guidance, some additional clarification, right? We need to make sure he's not using drugs and all that stuff. Refer him to these programs. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to make the fathers better fathers so that when they get their children, that they are able to be better at what they were doing. They like some fathers, right? We are going around with that old way of thinking. But you go to a couple of parenting class, you get into the fatherhood program, and all of a sudden you have a more expanded way of thinking about your role as a father. You get around some other men and you learn that other men are doing things. And so it could change the way you look at your fathering practice. And so, but these referrals need to be referrals that you believe that you know can make them better. So how do you know that? So if you're a provider, if you're like a referral source and you're looking for the provider, you never talked to the provider, you never went to their program, you never found out anything about it, you're just making a referral. So the only way you can know that this program is going to make it better is that you got to talk to these providers too. You have to have a relationship with the providers, a connection with the providers that allows for you to be able to say, this is a good program for them. This is a good program for them. Now, check this out. This is interesting. I always tell people whenever I do this presentation that the first 10 levels of fatherhood engagement, the 10 levels, anybody can do these first 10 levels because it's basic stuff. Listening, referring to programming, seeing people on equal footing, validation, all things that anybody could do. But the last 11, this takes a little bit more from the person. It takes more from the social worker. It takes more from the teacher. You have to put in some of your time to do these last 11. You have to think a certain way to do these last 11. And the question becomes, when you think about your engagement with fathers, with your engagement with men, are you willing to allow yourself to go this deep? Are you willing to go this deep with your fathers? So here we go. Level 11, have expectations of fathers. Have expectations of fathers. To have an expectation for somebody, that means you care about what's going to happen to them. If you don't care about somebody, you don't got no expectation for. But when you have an expectation for somebody, you're saying, Mr. Johnson, I expect more from you. Mr. Johnson, I want you to be a great father so your child can have a great father. This expectation may be the first person in their life that had some expectations for them. Men need that little push from somebody to say, like, Mr. Johnson, like we want to see you be the man that you're supposed to be. You know, Mr. Johnson, when you tell me, when you give me your word, I believe your word. I expect that what you say is gonna be the truth. That's a relationship. That's like me and you. We were like we're working this together. I don't expect you to be a bum. I don't expect you to fail. I don't expect you to lose. I expect you said you're gonna do it. I expect that you're gonna do it, Mr. Johnson. That is a different type of level. That's a deeper level of engagement. That's the kind of level of engagement we want to get with fathers. Level 12, root for fathers. Once again, this is a level where you have to really care about the father. People be doing this fatherhood work and they don't care. But when you're rooting for somebody, you're saying like, I know he's going to make it, man. He's going to get that child. I know he's going to show up to that meeting. He's going to get that job. He's going to stop using drugs. He's going to go into that drug treatment program. I want him to do it. I root for him. I pray for him. I hope for him. When you're rooting for fathers, it's not unprofessional to root for your clients. It's not unprofessional to say that I really hope this conversation I had with Mr. Johnson was the one that makes him make that next step in the right direction. Mr. Johnson is going to get that job. Mr. Johnson is going to get that apartment. Mr. Johnson is going to figure out the babysitting for his daughter. I'm rooting for Mr. Johnson. I want to see, because I know that if Mr. Johnson succeeds, then his children have a chance to succeed. I want to see Mr. Johnson make it because it has a ripple effect. Every time Mr. Johnson does something good, it goes all through his whole family. So I want to see Mr. Johnson be successful. And yo, I know it's hard. I know that some of you watching this video don't have that in your heart to root for these fathers. But this is where we need to go in order to be able to really make an impact on the lives of the fathers and their children. Level 13, encourage fathers. You see how fired up I am about this? Mr. Johnson needs somebody to say, Mr. Johnson, you can do it. You know, when you're a man, people aren't just going around giving you encouragement every day. When you're a man, when you're a father, you're supposed to have all the answers and all the tools and all of everything. So it's something to get a little pat on the back, a little word of encouragement from somebody else. You know, something as simple as, man, I see you. I see you, Mr. Johnson. Keep up the good work. Like, when's the last time you encouraged somebody with just a little bit of something? I see you, Mr. Johnson. Keep up the good work. You don't know how valuable that is, especially if you've been rooting for them, especially if you have expectations for them, especially if you've been listening to them. You heard their story and you give them that encouragement. I would even venture to say that the encouragement comes with a little sprinkle of love, because you like this agape type love where we want to see another man make it. I see you, Mr. Johnson. Keep up the good work. You should try that on. Maybe I see you is in your language, but you could say something that gives somebody encouragement that, because working with these systems is very difficult. Being a father ain't as easy as it used to be, man. We're not just gonna come home from work and sit in our chair and wait for our dinner. We gotta be a full-time father. We gotta do just as much. We gotta be on equal footing as mom. And when we're dealing with the systems, we got to go to our groups. We got to go to our meetings. We got to still go to work. We still got to get our lives together. We still got to maintain our house. We got to think about things that we never thought about. Fathers need encouragement. They need somebody to say, good job. I'm proud of you. So encourage the fathers that you work with when you're 13 levels deep in your fatherhood engagement. Work with fathers to tap into their paternal relatives for support. Now this is the big one. And maybe we could have put this earlier, because at the end of the day, we all need support. When we have children who are in any of these systems, when we could tap into our aunts, our uncles, our mothers, our fathers, when we tell the fathers, yo, you don't have to do this by yourself. You don't have to do this alone. We need to tap into your family resources so that your child can continue to be with your family. It's as simple as that. Your child can continue to be with your family, and we need to tap into these family resources. So if the father doesn't have his stuff together, we don't start thinking, well, foster care is the answer. No, there's paternal family members that can be able to step up and help out, and maybe one day the father gets himself together. You never know, but the family is there, and the only way we will know about that is if we tap into those resources. So don't half do it. We have to be able to pivot very quickly if we have a father who is lollygagging. This goes back to this having real conversations with fathers. If there's a point where you recognize that this father is lollygagging, you need to start saying to Mr. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, do you have any siblings? Mr. Johnson, are your parents in the area? Mr. Johnson, do you have uncles, aunts, cousins in this area? Because I would really like to have a conversation with them, because we need to have a plan, a backup plan. We need to be able to tap into your resources to assure that your child is able to stay within their family unit. Share the success of fathers. Oh man, this is a good one. Share the success of fathers. This is deep. This is when you're hanging out with your colleagues and you guys are just talking about whatever, and you should be sharing, oh, Mr. Johnson has made great success on his case. Oh, when I first got this case, I didn't know what was going to happen, but he's made a 180-degree turnaround. Oh, Mr. Johnson just got reunified with his child. Mr. Johnson has been consistent with his business. Mr. Johnson has employment. Mr. Johnson, we never would have thought that this father who was down on his luck, all the way down and just having a hard time, coming out of jail or whatever the situation is, we would have never guessed that he would be able to be successful. But I tell you, he is successful. And more of my cases are like that than I can count on my hands. The question starts becoming, when you have all these successful cases, the question is it that the cases are just easy and they're successful, or is it you? Is it the way you look at your cases? Is it the way that you work with your cases? The way you engage with your cases? Because you are probably the difference maker. You got your co-worker over here complaining about father. They're complaining about how the fathers, they aren't meeting with them and how the fathers aren't doing the right thing. But you should be in there sharing the successes. And the more you talk about the success of fathers, the more successful fathers you'll have. Even when you have one of those difficult cases, you will think of ways to turn that case around. You'll think of it. And you'll be able to even share that success. It's our mindset, right? And so we need to make sure that when you're thinking about the fathers you're working with, you are able to share the success that they're having. Level 16, invest time into fathers. Invest time. So there's a point where it's not about services. It's not about meeting for the contract. No, we're investing this time in the fathers because we recognize that by spending time with this man, by having this conversation with him, by being there with this person, we are transforming this father into something different. Maybe he won't be involved in the systems the way that he might have been before. You know, time and investment in somebody, it allows for something to come out of that. Now you might be sitting here watching saying, like, I don't know if I could go that deep. I don't know if I'm investing time into the fathers. But we're talking about fatherhood engagement. One of the things about fatherhood engagement, and we've been talking about this a lot here in My People, about being authentic with our work. See, everything can't just be for the dollar. Everything can't just be the job. Do I care about how fathers are operating in the world? Do I care about the well-being of the men that I serve? Do I care about it? Do I care about it as an individual? Or is it just my job? Is it my job or is it my purpose? When you start investing in people, it's more your purpose. You come to work purposeful, not just to do the job. And ultimately, isn't that, like, why would you be in social services? Why would you be in education if you weren't thinking of doing purposeful work? Follow up with fathers and stay in touch. Hey, at some point the cases do close. But isn't it something, if you did all this engagement, you deep with the father. It's nothing to call and check in. Mr. Johnson, it's been a few months since I talked to you. I just wanted to check in to see how everything was going. I wanted to let you know that I'm still here if you need me. I'm still somebody that is a part of your network. If you ever need some support, if you ever need some help, I'm here. So stay in touch with me. Hey, we're going to be having that fatherhood event on Father's Day or there or around Father's Day. I'd like to invite you to it. You are a part of our network. When you get this deep, it's just that you, like I said before, you have to have a greater purpose. It's the question starts becoming like, why am I doing what I do? If I just want to do it to check off the box, I don't think that makes me feel the same way. So we're doing people work. We're doing the work where we are actually saying that this father who successfully completed my program is somebody that I'm going to stay in touch with over the years, just because we were engaged to that level that I don't want to just lose touch with them. I don't want to just leave them out there. You might say, hey, what about the boundaries? Well, I think it's nothing to check in on somebody, to see what the true outcomes are. Because you can discharge somebody from a program today, and in a month they could be back jacked up. So we want to know what's the positive. We want to be able to say, oh, 3 months later he was doing good, 6 months later he was doing good, a year later he was doing good. So we follow up, we stay in touch. I mentioned this before. Hold fathers accountable to their word. Hold fathers accountable to their word. It's like the basis. It's like one of the bases of manhood. If my word is no good, if your word is no good, it's a standard. And so fathers that we're working with should know that when I say something, my word is good. When you say something, when you speak something as a father, when you say you're going to do something, I have to be able to know man to man or woman to man that your word is good. And if your word is no good, I'm going to hold you accountable to it. I'm going to come and I'm going to say to you that, yo, your word's no good. There has to be accountability for not being true to your word. Level 19, we're almost done. Believe the most difficult father on your caseload can be a good father and care for his child. Wow. This is a belief system. This is like the guy that's all the way at the bottom on your caseload right now. You have the belief system that something can happen that can transform this man into the best father that can care for his child. You can't count people out when you try to engage them. You can't say, well, he's a drug addict, so what's the point? You have to believe that this father, although a drug addict today, can turn his life around for his children, and he can be a good father and care for his child. You have to believe that on every case. Oh, this father who hasn't been involved in his child life for the last 5 years can be a good father and care for his child. This father who has had issues with the mom, when he says that he really does care for his child, you believe him, and you believe that he can be a good father, because we recognize that fatherhood, once again, is not something that you do from 0 to 5, from 5 to 12, from 12 to 18. You don't get to cut out being a father at 18. You are a father for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life, you're going to need a father. Yo, maybe there's some fathers out there. This is a novel thought. That aren't the best. They weren't the best when a child was a baby. These 3 years. But they were great when he was a toddler. He was absolutely wonderful when he was a teenager. You know, nobody talks about those struggles. And so we have to know that through the time of fatherhood, the time that we have fathers, that they're going to show up and they're going to be able to do what they need to do. All right, we're almost done. Level 20, be willing to stay the course. That's a good one. You got to be willing to stay the course. You got to be willing to stick in there with them. You're gonna think that it's over. You're gonna think that they've made their progress, and you're gonna find out that they just had a setback. You got to be willing to stay the course with them. You got to be willing to stick in there with them. You got to let them know, like, hey, man, we're here side by side. I got you. I got you. Now, like I said, some of you might be watching and saying, like, that's too much. I can't stick in there with anybody. And I would just say, well, why do we do this work? This is human services. Human. And so Staying the course is part of the work that we do. We should expect to deal with people when they're young, when they're older, and we should be able to say, like, I've known this guy for so many years. The course. Stay the course with fathers. All right, and this is the last one. Pick fathers up when they fail. Identify a new starting point. After all of that engagement, after all that work, after everything you've done, fathers, they just mess up. After all that you've done, they mess up, and we feel disappointed. We say, man, I encouraged you. I was there for you. I validated you. I pat your back. All of this. And you still went out and got high. And you still got yourself in trouble with the law. But we're not there to chastise. Our whole work, our work is to uplift, to work with. And so we fail, we pick it back up and say, we're going to start here. We're going to start again. We haven't run out of time. I'm still here for you. When you start engaging somebody after they've fallen, after they've been a superstar and they've fallen from grace, and they got to start back over, that's real engagement. That's real engagement when you're not just, everybody likes to deal with the fathers that are like doing everything they're supposed to do. What about when they don't do what they're supposed to do? When they fail? That's when you are really engaged with somebody, when they're at their worst. It's easy to deal with somebody when they're doing their best. All right, so this is the wrap up of my 21 levels of fatherhood engagement presentation. Any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, criticism, or feedback, I'm more than willing to take that. You can send me an email at arim@mypeople-ct.com. Once again, my name is Abdul-Rahmaan I, and I'm the Executive Director of My People Clinical Services, and I have over 20 years of fatherhood engagement work that I've done. I would love for you to check out also my website for my other initiative called the Manhood Tree, themanhoodtree.com. Yeah, stay in touch, and hopefully we'll do some more videos. So thank you. 21 levels of fatherhood engagement. Peace.